The soft, rhythmic thumping wasn't music from another apartment. It was the frantic beat of my own heart against my ribs. My phone screen, slick under my thumb, glowed in the dark room. Swipe left. 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 Stop. The screen exploded in a burst of candy pink light and a cheerfully distorted trill. A match. Rachel 2 miles away. Her photos were sun-drenched and perfect, a brunette laughing on a hiking trail, smiling with friends on a patio. Normal. So terrifyingly normal. They tell you to trust your gut, but they don't tell you what it sounds like when your gut stops screaming and just dies. A cold, silent stone in your belly. That silence hit me the moment he said my name. It was last spring. Rachel's profile was engineered, but not obviously. The pictures had a slight pixelation, a digital ghosting if you stared too long. She was a ghost writer for marketing firms, loved obscure films, asked thoughtful questions about my graphic design work. She remembered the name of my dog. After a week of flawless, refreshingly normal texting, she suggested the Oak Cellar. Quiet. Intimate. I arrived on a wet Wednesday, the restaurant a beacon of warm light in a district of closed warehouses. I texted here and received only the void in reply. Inside, the air smelled of old wine and dried rosemary. I waited at the host stand. The clock ticked. Each second was a hammer on an anvil. The pitying smiles from passing waitstaff were little shards of glass. 20 minutes. 30. In the genre of online dating, the stand-up is a cliché. The embarrassment, a rite of passage. But this story wasn't that genre. This was the moment the screen flickered and the real movie, the horror film, began to play. The door chimed a dull, metallic clang, not the light bell from earlier. A man stood silhouetted against the neon-lit fog, a solid shadow blocking the light. He was heavy-set, mid-40s, in a water-stained black hoodie. His eyes scanned the room, dark and depthless, and landed on me. They locked. He walked over, his footsteps making no sound on the polished concrete. Jake. Not a question. A statement of fact. My name wasn't on the reservation. I'd never given my last name. A cold trickle of fear traced my spine. I nodded, my throat sealed shut. I'm Rachel's brother. His voice was a flat, calm monotone, devoid of static or emotion. She's not feeling well. A migraine. But she didn't want to cancel. She asked me to bring you over. It's close. Just a few blocks. The script was flawless. The sick sister. The close by. The just get in the car. It was a predator's liturgy. He seemed almost embarrassed for her, apologetic. But his eyes, they never left mine. They didn't blink. They were assessing my compliance, measuring my fear. I asked why she hadn't texted. Phone died as she was leaving, he said. A perfect, unverifiable glitch. I asked for the address. He shook his head, a faint, ghost of a smile touching his lips. The townhouses are a maze. Numbers are all over the place. It's easier if I just show you. It's easier if I just show you. The sentence hung in the air, a spider on a single thread. Not I'll text it. Not let me write it down. Show you, follow me. Relinquish control. Step into the dark. My body made the decision before my mind could. I took a step back. I think we should reschedule. His polite facade didn't crack. It didn't need to. His body shifted, a subtle reconfiguration of mass. He didn't lunge. He simply expanded, filling the space between me and the door, the exit now framed by his shoulders. She'll be disappointed. She really wanted to meet you. It'll just take 5 minutes. 5 minutes a negotiation. A predator negotiating with his prey. I'll text her, I managed, the words dry as ash. I walked around him. My shoulder brushed the damp, cold fabric of his hoodie. I expected a hand, a grip, a violent end to the charade. Nothing. I pushed out into the swallowing cold of the night and walked, each step measured and deliberate, to my car. I could feel the weight of his stare between my shoulder blades, a physical pressure. Inside the car, the thunk of the locks was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. As I pulled away, my headlights swept across the restaurant's facade. He was there. Not in the doorway. Across the street, standing just outside the pool of light, perfectly still. Not watching the restaurant. Watching me. Watching my tail lights bleed into the night. At home, with a drink in my shaking hand, I tried to rationalize. Awkward brother. Socially inept family. I'd been rude. Then, at 11:07 p.m., my phone buzzed on the coffee table. The screen lit up the dark room. Rachel *, why didn't you come? My thumbs fumbled a reply, explaining the brother. The response was instantaneous. Rachel *, I don't have a brother. The 3 words sat there, glowing. Then, her smiling profile picture flickered, distorted, and was replaced by a gray, faceless silhouette. The profile was deleted. Vanished. And that's when the digital haunting began. The boundary between the online phantom and my physical world dissolved in a storm of malicious code. Alerts erupted across all my devices. My laptop, unusual login attempt. My phone, security alert, banking app access. My Instagram password was changed. I became a frantic digital ghostbuster, changing passwords, enabling 2-factor, a cold sweat soaking my shirt. The siege had moved from the street to my very identity. Then the texts started. From numbers with scattered area codes, always local when they arrived. Unknown * you should have come with me. Unknown * we saw you. Unknown * next time, don't waste my time. Then, the one that froze the blood in my veins. Unknown * you really disappointed us, Jake, my full, private legal name. There it was. My name. Not my nickname. My full, legal name, which existed nowhere on any dating profile, buried deep in personal records. This wasn't a scam. This wasn't random. I had been researched. I was a target that had been identified, and I had dared to step off the bullseye. The violation was absolute. The knocking came late that night. 2 sharp, polite raps. I froze on the couch, the TV glowing silently. A minute of humming silence. Then, bang. 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 A fist, hammering with enough force to shake the door in its frame. I crept forward, my breath held, and put my eye to the peephole. The fisheye lens showed an empty, yellow-lit hallway. As I watched, I heard it, heavy, deliberate footsteps on the concrete stairwell. Not running. Walking. 1. 2. 3. A measured, terrifying retreat. The police were polite the next day. They took notes. The first number traced to an encrypted burner app, a server in another country. No actionable crime, the officer said, not unkindly. No direct, prosecutable threat. He suggested I change my number. He didn't understand. The threat wasn't in the words. It was in the knowing. The knowing where I lived. The knowing my name. It was in the photograph. A week later, taking out the trash behind my building, I saw it. A folded piece of paper, neatly wedged under the handle of the grimy dumpster. My nickname was written on the outside in precise, block letters. The air left my lungs. I unfolded it. Inside was a high-resolution color print. It was me, from that night at the Oak Cellar. I was looking at my phone, my face a mask of anxious anticipation. The photo was taken through the restaurant window, from outside in the dark. The angle was low, as if the photographer had been crouching, patient, in the shadows. On the back, in the same sharp block letters, U. Rachel never existed. She was a ghost profile. A digital lure, crafted with meticulous care. Her purpose wasn't money, or attention, or kicks. Her purpose was to get a man to a specific location at a specific time, where a real, physical predator was waiting, watching, documenting. The plan was to get me into that car. The photo was the proof. It was a trophy from a hunt that failed. I have not downloaded a dating app since. Every notification chime is a spike of adrenaline. The only reason I am here, and not in a missing persons file, is because in one critical moment, I chose to be impolite instead of compliant. Your gut feeling isn't paranoia. It is the accumulated wisdom of survival, whispered in a silent language of ice and fire. Listen to it. The silence after the photograph was the worst part. The active terror had a rhythm, a pace. The silence was a vacuum, and my mind filled it with every horrible possibility. I stopped taking the trash out. I started looking at the dumpster from my kitchen window, a binocular silhouette against the brick wall. Was there another note? I'd stare until my eyes ached, seeing nothing but the greasy metal. I became a student of exits. In a coffee shop, I'd note the back door, the staff door, the window latch. I mapped the quickest path from my desk at work to the stairwell, avoiding the elevator, a metal box that could stop. I stopped wearing headphones on the street. The world became a series of potential ambush points, and every stranger a possible brother. The man walking his dog too slowly behind me. A tracker. The woman sitting alone in a car across the street. A spotter. Paranoia is a disease that feeds on possibility, and I had been given a universe of it. Sleep was fractured, a thin veneer over a pool of nightmares. In them, I got in the car. The interior smelled of stale cigarettes and wet wool. He never spoke, just drove, turning down streets that grew narrower, darker, leading to a warehouse that didn't exist on any map. The door would be open, a black rectangle. I'd wake up gasping, the taste of fear metallic on my tongue, my hand gripping the edge of the mattress as if I were falling. I told a close friend, the only one I trusted, not to tell me I was overreacting. He listened, his face growing pale. You have to move, he said, simple and direct. Not across town. Out of the city for a while. Go stay with your parents. He was right. But leaving felt like conceding, like letting them chase me out of my own life. It also felt like my only chance to breathe air that wasn't thick with dread. 2 months later, I sublet my apartment. I gave a vague story about a family emergency to my job and left. The first night in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by old sports trophies and movie posters, I slept for 12 hours straight. The deep, dreamless sleep of the utterly exhausted. For a week, I felt the knot in my shoulders begin to loosen. But the mind is a treacherous thing. Safety became its own kind of trap. Because in the safety, the questions grew louder, more insistent. Who was he? Not a name, but a type. A species. Was he a lone predator, or part of something? The we in the text suggested more than one. Was it a trafficking ring, using dating apps to source victims? Was it something more sadistic, a game for a twisted group who got off on the fear, the control? Or was he a solitary hunter, a meticulous planner who derived pleasure from the architecture of the trap itself, building the perfect Rachel, studying his target, setting the stage? That thought was perhaps the most chilling, that I hadn't been a random mark, but a chosen subject. That something about my profile, my pictures, my conversation, had made me interesting to him. I hired a digital security consultant, a grim-faced man who asked no unnecessary questions. He did a deep audit. He found traces a keylogger that had been installed via a phishing link I must have clicked weeks before matching with Rachel. It had harvested my passwords, my name, my address. The match wasn't the beginning. It was the culmination. The trap was already sprung before I ever saw her smiling face. The consultant wiped my devices, set up new, hardened security protocols. They were good, he said flatly. Not amateur hour. This was planned. His confirmation was a relief and a horror. I wasn't crazy. The monster was real, and it was competent. I never went back to that apartment. I moved to a new city, got a new job, a new phone number. I am a ghost now, in a way. I have no social media presence that isn't locked down and anonymized. I pay for a service that scrubs my personal data from people search sites. My digital footprint is a shallow puddle, not a deep well. But I still have the photograph. I keep it in a locked box. Not to look at, but as a relic, a tangible piece of evidence from the night the world cracked open. It's a reminder that the most dangerous monsters don't live in the shadows. They build the shadows. They craft the attractive, normal-looking light that makes you want to step into them. And sometimes, the only thing that saves you is a last-second refusal to go where it's easier to be shown. Sometimes, salvation is just a single, stubborn, impolite word, no. The cheerful, chiptune music from the arcade game trailer didn't match the reality. It bled from my car speakers, a grotesque parody of the night ahead. My thumb swiped through Hinge with a practiced, hopeful rhythm. Then, a match. Rebecca. Her profile was a sensory barrage of authenticity, a boomerang of her laughing as she threw a dart, a sun-soaked photo at a music festival, a candid in vet scrubs cuddling a kitten. It was almost too complete, too vibrant. You know the saying about things that look too good to be true? Sometimes, they're not just lies. Sometimes, they're the carefully arranged cheese in the trap. And I, grinning at my phone, was the mouse, scurrying right in, thinking I was headed for a night of skee-ball and craft beer. We clicked. We talked about impossible travel dreams, the merits of pineapple on pizza, our favorite forgotten 80s arcade cabinets. She suggested the Pixel Tavern. I knew it. It was a Friday night staple, a buzzing hive of noise and light. But when I turned into the lot that night, my headlights carved through a void. The parking lot was a black sea, empty save for two other lonely cars. The iconic neon sign fizzled and sputtered, half its letters dark. The usual thunderous bass line of music was absent, replaced by a low, discordant hum seeping from the building. My first feeling wasn't fear, it was disorientation. Had I gotten the date wrong? The time? I parked directly under the one functioning street light, a conscious, safety-conscious choice. The moment my engine cut, the silence was absolute. And in that silence, my phone buzzed, the vibration startlingly loud. Rebecca * here. Parking on the other side of the bar. Car trouble, sad face. The other side. I peered into the gloom. The other side was a concrete alley that vanished into a wall of darkness past the industrial dumpsters. A chain-link fence, crowned with rusty barbed wire, marked the end of the property. Beyond it, just the hungry, waiting woods. No one parked there. Ever. My finger hit the call button. It rang once in my ear. Then, not a voicemail, but a brief, digital screech, a sound like tearing metal before the line went dead. Before I could process it, another text. Rebecca * please just come around back and help with my car. It's really dark. The words glowed on the screen, a pulsing, malevolent sigil. This was the pivot. The moment the romantic comedy script was torn up and replaced with a survival horror manual. The manufactured crisis. The appeal to chivalry. The isolation play. It works because it attacks your humanity, your desire to be a good person. My mind fractured. One half, the decent half, pleaded, * a woman is alone and scared in the dark. Help * the other half, the ancient, reptilian part, screamed with pure, undiluted clarity, this is how you die. This is the exact scene they describe in the podcasts. My fingers, numb and clumsy, typed a reply, * this doesn't feel right. I'm leaving. * I threw the car into reverse. The white backup lights flared, illuminating the barren brick wall of the bar for a single, stark second. In that second, I saw them. They detached from the deepest shadows near the dumpsters, where the darkness was solid. Two figures. Not walking. In a full, silent, terrifying sprint. Dark, shapeless clothing. Ski masks, their hands were empty, clenched into fists, pumping in unison as they closed the distance with horrifying speed. They were on a direct, intercepting course for my driver's side door. No yells. No commands. Just silent, focused, violent intent. Time compressed. I slammed the shifter into drive, the transmission groaning. My foot stomped the accelerator to the floor. The tires screamed, searching for grip on the asphalt. The car lurched forward. In my rearview mirror, I saw one of the masked men skid to a halt. He didn't watch me go. He bent down, snatched something from the ground, a jagged, black lump of asphalt or a brick, and in one fluid, powerful, practiced motion, hurled it. I didn't hear the impact. I felt it. A deep, metallic crunch thud that shuddered through the entire frame of the car, jolting me in my seat. It wasn't a warning shot. It was calculated. Aimed to shatter a tail light, blow out the rear window, buckle the trunk lid, to maim, to disable, to slow the escaping prey. I didn't look back. I didn't stop for red lights. I drove on pure instinct, a small, terrified animal fleeing to its burrow. The reality of it hit me under the sterile, fluorescent light of my own garage. I stepped out, my legs weak, and walked to the back of my car. The dent was catastrophic. A fist of crumpled metal the size of a cantaloupe, edges sharp and vicious. I traced its contours with a trembling hand. This was violence fossilized in steel. This was the punctuation mark at the end of a sentence that began with a smiling girl and a dartboard. The police report was a formality. The officers were weary. They drove by the closed bar. No cameras pointed to the alley. The Rebecca profile had been deleted, a ghost in the machine. Likely a prank that went too far, one offered, not meeting my eyes. Kids being stupid. But I knew. Stupid kids throw eggs. Stupid kids tag walls. Stupid kids do not orchestrate complex, multi-person operations involving fake, verified identities, tactical positioning in total darkness, and projectile attacks with intent to incapacitate. That isn't stupidity. That is predation. That is hunting. The profile was the bait. The deserted bar was the chosen hunting ground. The car trouble was the call that mimics wounded prey. And I had been moments from stepping out of the car, from walking into that dark alley, where two silent hunters waited. In the days that followed, the shock hardened into a cold, relentless paranoia. I couldn't look at my car without seeing the dent. It was no longer just a car, it was a crime scene, a testament to a violence that had been meant for me. I took it to a body shop. The estimator whistled low. "What hit you?" "A meteor." I gave a vague story about a hit and run in a parking lot. As the mechanic worked, I imagined them finding something else: paint from another car, fibers from clothing, some forensic breadcrumb. They found nothing. Just bent metal. I became obsessed with the how. How did they empty the bar? A few calls revealed that a private party had booked out the Pixel Tavern for that Friday night, paying in cash up front, then canceling last minute, citing an emergency. The bar staff, expecting no business, had been sent home early. The two cars in the lot? Probably theirs. The entire venue had been sterilized, made into a perfect vacuum for their operation. This wasn't opportunistic. It was a military-style operation: intelligence, my profile, my habits, preparation, booking the bar, creating Rebecca, and execution, the ambush. I tried to reverse engineer Rebecca. I used every reverse image search I could find. The pictures were ghosts. They'd been lifted from a private, since deleted Instagram account of a young woman in another country, then expertly edited and filtered to create a new, coherent identity. The video of her throwing darts was the most chilling feat: likely deepfake technology, or a stolen video with her face superimposed. This was a level of effort that spoke of resources, or a terrifying degree of dedication. My friends told me to let it go. "You're safe, that's what matters," they'd say. But I didn't feel safe. I felt studied. If they could do this once, with this level of precision, who's to say they weren't doing it right now to someone else? The next guy might not see the dent in his trunk. He might see the inside of a van. I started researching. I fell down rabbit holes of true crime forums, reading about abduction tactics, trafficking modus operandi. The pattern fit a terrifying niche: the use of attractive female profiles to lure men, not women. Most warnings are for women. Men are told they might get scammed for money, catfished for ego. We aren't warned we might be hunted for sport, or for something far darker. I found a handful of similar stories, buried in comment sections, dismissed as creepy but not criminal. Stories of dates lured to weirdly empty places, of last-minute location changes to alleys or secluded parks, of strange friends showing up. The details lined up with mine like points on a constellation no one wanted to see. I installed security cameras at my new place: not just a doorbell cam, but full coverage of the perimeter. I bought a personal alarm that could shatter eardrums. I took a self-defense class, not the standard stuff, but one focused on escaping grabs and creating distance to run. The instructor, a former cop, listened to my abridged story and nodded grimly. "You were targeted for a snatch and grab," he said. "Probably for trafficking. You're the right demographic, isolated, looking for connection, physically capable of forced labor. They weren't there to rob you, they were there to take you." His matter-of-fact confirmation was like a nail being driven into my reality. The psychological wound was the slowest to heal. Trust evaporated. Every notification on a dating app, if I dared to open one, felt like a tripwire. A match was no longer a thrill, it was a threat assessment. I'd scrutinize photos for digital artifacts, cross-reference bios, demand a video call within 3 messages. Most women, understandably, thought I was unhinged and unmatched. The ones who complied, I'd meet only in the broad daylight of a crowded cafe, my back to the wall, my eyes constantly scanning the room. Romance was dead. It had been replaced by counter-surveillance. The dent was eventually pounded out, the paint matched. But you could still see it if you knew where to look, a faint ripple in the metal's reflection, a scar. I kept it. I refused the shop's offer to replace the entire trunk lid. The scar was my reminder. A receipt for a lesson paid for in adrenaline and a piece of my soul. I still think about them. The 2 figures in the masks. Were they just hired muscle? Or were they partners in this, deriving a sick pleasure from the hunt? I wonder about Rebecca's voice. Who was typing those messages? One of the men? Or a third person, a coordinator sitting in a dark room somewhere, managing multiple lures at once? The infrastructure implied by the empty bar, the fake profile, the coordination, it feels like a small, evil enterprise. Most of all, I think about the alternate timeline. The one where I was a little more gallant, a little less paranoid. Where I got out of the car, called out hello, into the dark alley. In that timeline, there is no dent in my car. There is just a missing persons report that goes cold, a car left running in an empty lot, and a phone that rings and rings before going to voicemail, somewhere in the woods behind a chain link fence. I don't date anymore. Not really. The cost of vetting is too high, the fear of the false positive too great. My life is quieter now. I have my friends, my work, my fortified apartment. The world outside my door is no longer a place of potential connection, but a terrain of managed risk. I survived because I prioritized fear over courtesy, suspicion over chivalry. In the moment of truth, I chose to be a bad date rather than a victim. And in the economy of survival, that is the only transaction that ever really matters. The silence in my small condo was a physical thing, thick with the smell of stale coffee and textbook glue. It was the silence of profound burnout, the kind that makes you crave connection like a drowning man craves air. That's where he found me. Michael. He didn't match with me on the mainstream apps, he found me in a niche forum for graduate students, a quiet corner of the internet where we complained about thesis advisors and shared stress relief memes. His first message was a masterpiece of targeted empathy: "Saw your post about the Herzberg reading. It's a slog, but his point about hygiene factors is weirdly applicable to academic burnout, don't you think?" He was a calm, steady presence in my chaos. A good listener. He remembered the name of my difficult professor, the specific chapter I was struggling with, the brand of terrible coffee I drank. We started talking every night. His voice, a warm, baritone calm over the phone, became the highlight of my grim routine. He was my digital sanctuary, a voice in the dark that told me I was seen, understood. We talked for hours about everything and nothing: philosophy, Terrible TV, dreams of traveling to places with unpronounceable names. He was funny, self-deprecating, and seemed genuinely fascinated by me. Before I knew it, we were in a relationship. A digital one, but it felt more real than any flesh and blood interaction I'd had in months. But sanctuaries can be cages. The first red flag was a tiny, almost invisible stitch in the fabric. He never showed his face. His phone camera was shattered in a bike accident. His laptop webcam was a relic from the Stone Age that never worked. I, buried in my own misery and intoxicated by the attention, accepted it. I built his face from the timbre of his voice, from the kindness of his words. I pictured sharp, intelligent eyes, a gentle smile. The fantasy was more vivid than reality. The second flag was brighter, blood red. Whenever our conversations drifted toward anything intimate, his tone would change. The warmth would sharpen into a pointed, persistent pressure. It started subtly, "I wish I could see you smile right now," escalating to requests for a picture to keep me going, and finally, blunt demands for explicit photos. I shut it down, every time. "I'm not comfortable with that. I don't do that." He'd apologize, retreat, and the kind, understanding Michael would return, only to ask again days later, as if the previous violation had never occurred. It was a cycle: build trust, test the boundary, retreat, repeat. An emotional pump and dump. And the meetings. God, the meetings. Every time I suggested coffee, a walk in the park, anything to make the voice a real person, he had an excuse. A family emergency that sounded scripted. A sudden work trip to a city he'd never mentioned. A migraine that lasted precisely as long as the proposed date. Soon, he'd promise, his voice dripping with performative regret. "I want to more than anything. Soon." But soon was a horizon that kept receding, a carrot on a stick I was too exhausted and lonely to stop chasing. My friends, who heard my half of these late-night calls, staged an intervention over cold pizza. "He won't do a video call?" "At all?" my roommate, Chloe, asked, her voice a mix of concern and frustration. "Marie, even a 10-year-old laptop has a camera. This isn't adding up." I defended him. I painted pictures of his difficult past, his social anxiety, his financial struggles that meant he couldn't just buy a new webcam. I was the architect of his alibis, building his prison around myself. But deep down, in the pit that wasn't just from academic stress, I knew they were right. The fantasy was becoming a prison. In a moment of desperate, holiday-spiced hope, I invited him to spend Christmas with my family. It was a Hail Mary pass, a test. To my shock, he accepted immediately, his voice brimming with genuine-sounding joy. "I'd love that." "Really? It means everything that you'd ask me." For the first time, I let the fantasy fully consume me. I pictured him at the dinner table, laughing with my dad, helping my mom in the kitchen. A real beginning. I bought him a small, silly gift. I felt light. The day before he was to arrive, my phone rang. He was crying. Real, ragged, ugly sobs that hitched in his throat. "Can we talk?" he whispered. What followed was a confession that didn't feel like a release, it felt like a demolition. The words were grenades, blowing apart the beautiful fiction I'd lived in for months. He spoke in a broken monotone. The photos were stolen. Not from a random model, but from the Instagram of a young Indonesian influencer, meticulously curated and cropped over years. His name was fake. His job was fake. His entire history, the stories about his sister, his college, his childhood dog were exquisite, detailed lies. As a final, cruel twist of the knife, he sent me a picture. "This is me," the text said. The face that loaded was that of a stranger. A man decades older than the 24-year-old he claimed to be, with hard, deep-set eyes, a coarse complexion, and a thin, unsmiling mouth. It was a face that spoke of a life entirely foreign to the one he'd described. The cognitive dissonance was violent. My skin tried to crawl off my bones. The pressure for nudes, the avoidance seeing this face behind those requests made my stomach heave with a fresh, profound violation. When I told him it was over, his sadness evaporated. It was replaced by a scalding, instant rage. "So you're just like the others," he spat, his voice now a stranger's, stripped of all its crafted warmth. "You only liked the pictures. You never cared about me. You're shallow. You're fake." The audacity was breathtaking. He had built a relationship on a foundation of sand and was now furious at me for the earthquake. He oscillated between rage, wheedling apology, and desperate begging within seconds. Then came the most unhinged demand of all. "Please," he whimpered, the rage gone, replaced by a terrifying, childlike neediness. "Just let me still come for Christmas. I told my family I wouldn't be there. I have nowhere else to go. You can't just abandon me." I stared at the phone, the device that had been my lifeline, now feeling like a toxic artifact. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I felt a cold, clear detachment. "No," I said, and ended the call. I muted him. I blocked every number, every social media account I knew. I had a quiet, peaceful Christmas, the ghost of his voice finally silent. The gift I bought him went in the trash. For almost a year, I healed. I passed my boards, started a new, exciting job, rediscovered joy in old hobbies. I posted on Instagram again silly selfies with friends, accomplishments, bright cosplay photos from conventions where I felt powerful and creative. I was living, not just surviving. The experience with Michael receded into the past, a painful but closed chapter. A lesson learned about online anonymity. I was careful, but not paranoid. And in my happiness, I made a single, critical error. In the chaotic hour of blocking him, I had missed one account. A backup Instagram account he must have followed me with long ago, under a vague username I didn't recognize. Michael and I still followed each other. The notification was innocuous at first. A message request. I opened it, and the world dropped out from under me. Unknown user *, "Hey, how have you been? Saw your cosplay. You look amazing." The tone was familiar. Too familiar. I clicked the profile. It was bare, but the few followers were a mix of random accounts and me. A chill traced my spine. I didn't reply. Over the next 24 hours, more messages came, polite at first, then increasingly persistent, dripping with a fake, nostalgic warmth. Unknown user *, "Remember our late night talks?" Unknown user *, "I miss your voice." Unknown user *, "You never gave me a real chance." Disgust and fear warred within me. I blocked the account. For 3 days, nothing. A false calm. Then, on a Saturday evening while I was dog-sitting for my parents at their quiet suburban house, a new message request appeared. This time, there was no text. Just a single image. It was a photograph of my parents' house. Taken from the street, at twilight, just minutes before. My car was clearly visible in the driveway. The lights were on in the living room, where I was sitting alone. The angle was precise, deliberate. It wasn't a random drive-by. It was a declaration, asterisk I am here. I see you. You are alone asterisk. The air turned to ice in my lungs. I was moving before I could think, a bolt of pure adrenaline shooting through me. I locked the front door, the back door, checked every window latch. My heart was a frantic bird against my ribs. As I fumbled with the deadbolt on the kitchen door, the pounding started. It wasn't a knock. It was an assault. A fist hammering against the wooden front door with such force the whole frame shuddered. The sound was enormous in the quiet suburban night. Marie. Open the door. Please. We need to talk. His voice. It was the voice from the phone, but stripped of all its crafted warmth, raw, ragged, and terrifyingly real. It was the voice of the stranger in the photograph, screaming my name into the dusk. He was no longer a digital ghost. He was on the porch. I crumpled to the floor behind the couch, phone in hand, whispering to the 911 dispatcher. He's outside. He's at my house. He's screaming my name. He has a knife. I added the last part instinctively, the worst case scenario vomiting into my mind. Stay where you are. Do not open the door. Help is on the way. The pounding was a frantic, chaotic drum beat against the soundtrack of his screams, pleading, threatening, weeping. Just talk to me. 5 minutes. You owe me that. The veneer was gone. This was the raw, furious entitlement of the catfish who believed his constructed reality granted him rights in mine. It felt like hours. It was 4 minutes. Then, new sounds, the warble of a siren cutting off, shouts of police, the scuffle of feet on gravel, a final, guttural yell that was cut short. Silence. The officer who came to the door had a kind but grim face. He's in custody, she said. She waited a beat, choosing her words with the care of someone delivering news that will alter a life. For your report, and for your awareness, when we apprehended him on the porch, he was holding a knife. The sentence hung in the air. A knife. The possibilities unfolded in my mind like a series of horrific film strips, him forcing his way in, the threat, the violence. Or a performative self-harm scenario, a final, dramatic manipulation to trap me with his blood on my conscience. Every possibility was a room in a house of nightmares. The man behind the digital mask, the kind voice in the dark, had arrived at my doorstep armed. The line between catfish and stalker had not just been crossed, it had been obliterated by the glint of steel. I had to tell my parents everything. The humiliation was almost as acute as the fear. Their anger at my secrecy was brief, swallowed by a tidal wave of parental terror and relief. The locks were changed. A security system was installed. The police explained I could file for a restraining order, but as the officer said quietly, orders are just paper. The type of person who does this, they often see it as part of the conversation. The aftermath was a different kind of quiet. Not the quiet of burnout, but the quiet of a battlefield after the guns stop. I was diagnosed with PTSD. The sound of a door knocking, even politely, would send me into a shaking fit. I couldn't answer my phone if I didn't recognize the number. I moved again, leaving no forwarding address with anyone but my immediate family. The lie wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the terrifying, weaponized entitlement, the belief that his fictional world, his invested time, gave him real-world rights to my life, my safety, my home. He hadn't just fallen for his own fantasy, he had decided to enforce it. The voice on the phone was finally, irrevocably real, and it had come carrying a sharp, cold truth I could never unlearn. The most dangerous prison isn't made of bricks, it's made of borrowed pixels and the desperate, violent need of the person hiding behind them. I had given a ghost a key to my world, and it had tried to use it, not to visit, but to move in permanently. It was supposed to be a spontaneous drink. A last-minute spark on a boring Tuesday. Jenna's Hinge profile was a gallery of effortless allure, a gym selfie showcasing toned arms and a bright smile, a sunset beach picture with perfect waves, a video of her laughing with a crowd of attractive friends at a rooftop bar. She was stunning. The kind of match that makes you glance around, wondering if someone is playing a joke on you. We bantered about our mutual love of terrible horror movies and spicy food. The conversation flowed almost too easily. Within an hour, she suggested moving to Instagram. "I hate checking this app," she said. "My Instagram is at jenna.axa." It felt like progress, a step toward the real her. Her Instagram had the glossy patina of reality: 2,000 followers, a few hundred following. There were 2 posts, a mirror gym selfie and a picture of her at a concert. Both were flawless, garnering hundreds of likes from what looked like a legion of thirsty male followers. Her story had a fresh clip from the gym that very morning. It felt real enough. The digital breadcrumbs checked out. When she said, "I'm actually near your area tonight." Feeling spontaneous. Drinks at the Gilded Glass, it felt like kismet. The universe was rewarding my swiping diligence. I agreed, a thrill in my chest. This never happened. The Gilded Glass was my local, a place with dim lighting, expensive cocktails, and a vibe that encouraged quiet conversation. I arrived 10 minutes early, wanting to secure a good spot. The bar was pleasantly busy for a Tuesday, a low hum of chatter and clinking glass. I took a stool at the far end of the bar, ordered an old-fashioned, and sent her a DM here. At the bar. No rush. I scanned the room, playing a nervous game of which one is she. No one matching her photos walked in. My phone stayed dark. After 10 minutes, I checked Instagram. My message was delivered, but not seen. A flicker of doubt. I was nursing my drink when a man slid onto the stool directly next to me, despite there being several empty ones further down. He was in his late 30s, with a patchy, neglected beard and eyes that were a little too bright, a little too eager. He smelled of cheap whiskey and cigarette smoke. "Hey man," he said, his voice too loud for the intimate space. "Slow night, huh?" I gave a non-committal nod, turning slightly back to my phone. He didn't take the hint. "You from around here? I feel like I've seen you before." He introduced himself as Rob. He was aggressively friendly, asking what I did, where I lived, his questions landing like small, intrusive probes. My politeness warred with rising discomfort. This was the exact kind of lonely, overbearing bar interaction I'd come here to avoid, just with a different stranger than I'd expected. My attention was split between his unwelcome monologue and my silent phone. A sickening realization began to dawn. I opened Jenna's Instagram profile again. Really looked. 2 posts. Thousands of followers, but who were they? I scrolled the list. All men. Generic, faceless accounts, or profiles of guys posing with fish or in gym mirrors. Not a single obvious female friend. No tagged photos. No pictures with family. The vibe was off. It was a portfolio, not a life. I opened Hinge. Searched for her profile. It was gone. Deleted. The air left my lungs in a quiet rush. Catfished. The humiliation was instant and hot, a blush creeping up my neck. I'd been stood up by a phantom, and now I was stuck fending off this creep. Anger, sharp and clean, cut through the embarrassment. I signaled the bartender for my check. Leaving so soon? Rob asked, his voice taking on a whiny, needling quality. The night is young. The good crowd doesn't even show up till later. Yeah, something came up, I muttered, pulling out my wallet. Ah, come on. Stay for one with me. I hate drinking alone. He put a hand on my forearm. It was a casual, buddy-buddy gesture, but his grip was firm, damp. I pulled my arm away. I'm good, thanks. As I stood up to leave, he moved faster than I expected. He didn't stand. He swiveled on his stool and his hand shot out, not for my arm this time, but for my wrist. His fingers clamped around it in a tight, unyielding circle. His grip was shockingly strong. Hey, I started, trying to yank back. He pulled me close. His breath was hot and sour against my ear as he whispered, the bar noise swallowing his words for everyone but me. The sentence he uttered was only 7 words long, but it unraveled my entire understanding of the evening. I'm Jenna. I'm sorry. Please don't go. Time stopped. The bar noise faded into a dull roar. My brain short-circuited, trying to reconcile the beautiful woman from the photos with the desperate, unshaven man holding my wrist. It wasn't a prank. It wasn't a friend catfishing me for laughs. It was him. He had created her. He had messaged me. He had lured me here. And he had been sitting next to me the whole time, feeding off my anticipation, watching me check my phone for him. The violation was so profound, so intimate, it felt like a spiritual theft. He hadn't just lied to me, he had infiltrated the space between my expectation and reality and curled up inside it. I wrenched my arm free with a force born of revulsion. I didn't say a word. I just looked at him, really looked, and saw the pathetic, raw need in his eyes, the terrifying blurring of his fantasy and this moment. I turned and walked out, my skin crawling. I heard a low, choked sound behind me, not a laugh, but something worse. A sob of frustration. The drive home was a blur of nausea and shaking anger. I felt filthy. I scrubbed my wrist in the sink until the skin was red. I blocked the Instagram account, threw my clothes in the hamper, and tried to drown the memory in a shower so hot it turned my skin pink. I told myself it was over. A bizarre, horrific encounter, but over. He'd gotten his sick thrill, his moment of perverse connection. It was done. I was wrong. 2 hours later, I was in bed, lights off, trying to convince my racing mind to shut down. The room was dark except for the faint blue glow of a power strip. That's when it happened. Bang. The sound was explosive, a thunderous impact against the window pane right next to my head. The glass rattled in the frame. I jerked upright, my heart seizing. A rock. A fist. Silence. Then, a voice. Slurred, pleading, slithering through the double-paned glass. Scott. Hey, Scott. It was him. Rob. Jenna. He was outside my first-floor bedroom window. He had followed me home. Scott. Come on, man. Talk to me. I just want to talk. His voice was a grotesque parody of the friendly barfly, now tinged with a wheedling, obsessive etch. He knew my name. Of course he did. He knew everything I'd told Jenna. Paralysis locked my limbs. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. I just stared at the blind, a sliver of street light cutting through the gap at the edge. I can see the light from your TV earlier, he whined. I know you're in there. Just come to the window. 5 minutes. He started repeating my name. Scott. 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 It became a chant, a creepy, hypnotic mantra. He said it 10 times, 20, his voice sometimes fading as if he'd stepped back, then returning stronger, closer to the glass. He was talking to himself now, muttering apologies, then cursing, then pleading again. The performance was for an audience of one, me trapped in my own bedroom. After what felt like an eternity, the chanting stopped. I heard the crunch of gravel underfoot, moving away. I didn't sleep. I sat with my back against the wall opposite the window, a kitchen knife in my lap, watching the digital clock march through the night. Dawn brought no relief, only a deeper horror. As the gray light filtered in, I saw it. Taped to the outside of the window, on a grease-stained fast food napkin, were words written in smeared, hasty capital letters with what looked like a black marker. I'll be watching you. The violation was now territorial, permanent. He hadn't just touched my wrist, he had tagged my home. I called the police. They took a report, walked the perimeter, found nothing. No fingerprints on the window. The napkin was generic. Probably just a drunk, messed up guy, the officer said. He got fixated on you at the bar. It happens. He'll likely move on when he doesn't get a reaction. They suggested I get curtains. Their powerlessness was a second assault. I didn't feel safe in my own apartment. The window, once just a window, was now an eye. Every car that slowed outside, every footstep on the sidewalk, was a potential him. I stayed at a friend's place for 3 nights. When I came back, the napkin was gone, maybe by wind, maybe by him. It didn't matter. The message was internalized. I broke my lease and moved within the month. The cost was staggering, but my sanity had a price, and I'd reached it. I moved to a building with a doorman, on a high floor. I got new phone numbers, new email addresses. I scrubbed my social media, making everything locked down and private. But the psychological scar was the deepest. The experience rewired my understanding of human interaction. It wasn't about being catfished for money or ego. This was different. This was identity theft for the purpose of intimate trespass. He didn't want to be me, he wanted to force me to interact with a version of him that I would find desirable. He wanted to bypass my defenses, my preferences, my very sexuality, and inject himself directly into a moment of romantic potential. The grab of my wrist was the physical manifestation of that violation, an attempt to literally drag me into his distorted fantasy. For months, I couldn't look at an attractive woman's dating profile without a wave of suspicion and fear. Was she real? Or was she a JENNA, a digital puppet for some lonely, furious man sitting in a dark room, waiting for me to swipe right so he could feel, for one moment, like someone I would want? The app became a haunted house, every match a possible doorway not to a person, but to a pathology. I learned the hard way that the most dangerous catfish aren't the ones who hide forever. They're the ones who need to reveal themselves. They need to see the shock on your face, feel the recoil of your body, to make their fantasy real. The digital deception is just the foreplay. The climax is the moment they step out from behind the avatar and say, with their own mouth, "It's me." They want to witness the collapse of your reality into theirs. My crime wasn't rejecting JENNA. It was rejecting him after the reveal. I had refused to participate in the final act of his script, and so he had followed me home to try and force the ending. I don't use dating apps anymore. The trust is gone. Sometimes, in a crowded bar, I'll catch a man looking at me a little too long, a little too intently, and a cold jolt will go through me. Is he building a profile? I'll never know. The world is now full of invisible strings, and I am terrified of who might be holding the other end. JENNA taught me that in the digital age, you're not just dating a person. You're dating their sanity. And sometimes, you find out too late that you've matched with the abyss, and it's been smiling back at you with perfectly photoshopped teeth.